just for anyone's interest, when we do the prayer gesture, I've heard that if if you're interested, if you use your thumbs like that, as though you're holding a precious jewel, that's just, one of the things, like, because a precious jewel can only give you things, happiness for this life, but having an awakening mind or developing bodhicitta can give you pleasure and happiness for many lives. So even though it's a wish-granting jewel. Okay, so in the last couple of weeks I've talked about that refuge prayer. The meaning in that refuge prayer is, in Tibetan, it says Sangye, which is a Buddha, which is one with an awakened mind. So you're taking refuge in the Buddha. The Buddha has the ability and the desire, the willingness to help all beings and can show the path to overcome all suffering. So, and then the other word is Janchu. We've got a Geshe here called Janchu, Geshe Janchu. And that means, so the Sangye has adopted all the positive qualities, wisdom, compassion, and the Janchu has abandoned or got rid of all the negativities, all the things that, cause us unhappiness. So what I did the last couple of weeks, I've talked about what we need to abandon in terms of Janchu, and so I thought this week and next week I'd talk about what we need to adopt. So, what practices. We don't have to do anything. I'm just saying that this is in terms of Buddhism, right? So I'm going to talk tonight about compassion, love and compassion, but compassion is the basis of a bodhisattva. Like bodhisattvas, jump into action because they have incredible, unbearable compassion. Compassion that finds other sentient beings suffering unbearable. It's so unbearable that they feel they've got to do something about it. And the something they have to do about it is to attain an awakening mind. So compassion is at the source of everything. It's compassion is the wish for beings to not suffer, for all beings, for any being, anyone, not suffer, and for ourselves is to not suffer. So that's the sort of definition. And love is for other beings, for everybody to be happy, to have happiness. Compassion is like, it's the wellspring of all the, the motivation and everything for bodhisattvas, and bodhisattvas become Buddhas, so it's the basis. And love and wisdom. They say that a bird with only one wing can't fly, of course, but the two wings to make the bird soar into the air. Wisdom and compassion. We all have compassion. We all have compassion, strong compassion. We all feel, we don't want our friends, our loved ones, everyone in general to suffer. Even all the more distant things, strangers or, people we might see or hear about. We all have compassion, and but we don't have great compassion. Great compassion is the compassion that realizes the suffering of all beings and really decides to do something about it. Like actually says, like you can't just say, hey, to your best friend, hey, can you do something about all the suffering in the world, please? I find it too overwhelming. So could you do that? So you can't really ask anyone else to do that. And so the bodhisattva, who's the person who, you know, is dedicated to, you know, to becoming enlightened for the sake of all beings. So how can one person help? Well, one person can help quite a lot, I think, you know, of a sort of, you know, one person can help maybe out of, you know, a whole audience. There's one person who does become, you know, a bodhisattva, and then so forth and so forth. So eventually, it's a very long-range plan. So because sentient beings suffer, all sentient beings, all of us, all realms, we all have suffering because we experience 3 different types of suffering. You know, we experience the suffering of change, you know, just from maybe eating too much chocolate if you get sick, or being the example they give is being in the sun, you know, being warm in the sun, and then getting too hot, and then needing to go into the shade and cool off. So the sun is not really a cause of happiness, because it causes us to be burnt and to be uncomfortable when there's too much of it. But we think that's the happiness. So a lot of things we think are happiness are not really. They can be the cause of suffering. Yeah, sentient beings, they wander in cyclic existence like a bucket in the well. I'll explain that analogy later after we've done some meditation. Also, you gain a lot more good, dare I use the word, karma, from having the field of your observation, as they call it, being all sentient beings. That means you gain a lot more, you know, positive, you know, positive things, physical and mental, because the field of your observations of who you're concentrating on is all sentient beings. So personally, I reflect on that. I reflect on compassion, and I think, yes, I do find some examples unbearable, you know, of some unbearable suffering of people, you know, of things, of what's going on in the world. I find that, and I find that, you know, I do have compassion, but I need to work on the great compassion, because it's limited, and unless we include all sentient beings, then, you know, we're either not caring for someone, or we're, you know, being mean to someone, or we're reacting in a sort of negative way. So getting back to my personal reflection on it is that, okay, so beings suffer, and I, you know, wish I could relieve their suffering. But I think, what does one need to do? And do we, you know, is that a realistic aim? Like, can we realistically help all beings? Can we realistically attain an awakened mind? Well, I think what we can do is we can reflect on, you know, our own suffering. We can sort of, you know, see that our own suffering, and from the teachings they say that, you know, it's very hard, it's very hard to retain a good rebirth. Of course, we believe in reincarnation, other lives. And it is very hard to do that, but I think what we need to do is really, at a sort of lower level, at a certain level, you know, be able to relax, be able to have a calm mind, be able to be in control of our mind, of our thoughts to a certain degree, to reflect on what we hear, you know, about the teachings, and think, is that true for me? Does that ring true? And think about compassion, think about love, think about, just reflect on it if it's true. I mean, the Buddha always said, don't just believe me, check on it, like they say, like gold. To tell whether something's gold or not, they rub it and burn it and, make sure that it is real gold. So I think that, and then I think if we do, try and attain a sort of a calm, happy, relaxed mind, then we can develop other qualities. We can look at developing compassion and see what that means for us, and we can reflect on the sufferings of all beings, how beings suffer. And then we can develop, love for other beings wanting to be happy. I think it's, if we sort of, like if we develop that sort of mind, like a calm, clear, compassionate, loving mind, they say that when we die, we are more likely, and if we have been sort of not negative to other people and we've had good relationships, that when we die we have a great chance of going to a better life, and so on. And then we develop our compassion, our love and compassion and wisdom. So it's not as though we have to, immediately it's not as though we're going to immediately develop an awakened mind, tomorrow or soon. It's a very long process, but I think if we eliminate negativities in our mind, that's a huge step. So anyway, for meditation, just generally about meditation. Meditation is about keeping a happy mind. I was reading what Geshe Doga had said in some talks he gave down in Warrnambool, and he said meditation is just about keeping a happy mind, not letting a negative mind get in. Well, that's pretty good. So that's our aim in in meditation, and that's what it does. So when we focus on our breath in meditation, we're trying to exert more control, rather than have the thoughts, controlling us. And we certainly see how invasive some thoughts are. So the posture is important. There's different types of meditation. There's more of a single-pointed concentration, single-pointed focus on an object, which is sort of what we're doing when we do breathing meditation, and single-pointed concentration on other things like developing compassion and all sorts of other ideas or concepts. So what I'll do tonight is we'll do like maybe 10 minutes of breathing meditation, and then I'll go into the meditation on equanimity, because I don't think we can talk about compassion unless we have an equanimity, which means unless we try to see all beings as being deserving of compassion and being like us, same as us. But we have enemies and strangers and friends, so that means we don't have equanimity. Well, not enemies, but we do have people we don't like, or people we argue with, or people who annoy us. So I don't think we can develop great compassion unless we can have some sort of equanimity. So I'll go into the equanimity meditation, which is, it's about seeing a friend, enemy and stranger, and it's about looking at our attitude toward them, because really we designate those things onto people, like they're a stranger or take no notice, or we're not really concerned about them. And a friend, yes, of course, we designate someone as a friend. we're doing all this in here, and a so-called enemy, well, that's all coming from here as well, really, even though someone might have done something bad to you. To think of them as not being inherently bad is a very useful way of thinking. Okay, so for the posture for meditation, we can all... so as I say, I'll do some breathing meditation, then I'll move into equanimity, which is more of a led meditation. So the posture is to be really as relaxed as possible. It's good to have your back straight, because as straight as possible, because the energy, it helps the energy, sort of makes it more flexible. And we, if we can, sit in the lotus position with our, feet tucked in and our arms relaxed, our shoulders relaxed, our arms relaxed, sort of with, room between our body and our arms. And our hands, right hand on top of the other, and creating a triangle sort of towards our navel. Our tongue behind our top palate. Our eyes looking sort of 45-degree angle in front, but maybe not closed, totally closed, and not open. Whatever's comfortable there. If too closed, you might fall asleep. And if your eyes are too open, you might be distracted. So we can take 3 deep breaths and exhale. So what we're doing is we're focusing on our breath. If we lose focus, we start to think about something, just go back to your breath. 100% focus on the breath. Or you can focus on, your lungs going in and out. Or if it's difficult, just on the breath, you can count 1 inhalation in and 1 out. And we think of our motivation for doing this is to develop a calm mind, to experience the clarity of our mind, and to be not to be dominated by negative thoughts, to improve our happiness and contentment. Now visualize a friend, a loved one, in front of you. And see that a friend may not always be a friend. Friendship can change into non-friendship. And we designate them friend, but in past lives they may not have been friend. And then visualize someone called not friend, enemy, someone we have had difficulty with or dislike. So they may not always be our non-friend, our enemy. They may turn out to be reconciled and be a friend. Or someone we care about. And previously, whether in this life or previous lives, they may have been a friend, in fact. It's how we're designating them or labeling them. And then visualize in front of you a stranger, someone you don't know. So a stranger could have been a friend before now, or in a past life, and could easily become a friend. So friend, enemy and stranger are all how we are thinking about them. It's all our thoughts about who they are, what they are. But the reality is quite different. think that we can develop compassion for all these people. And spread the compassionate feeling you have to all your friends, loved ones, people close to you. Not wanting them to suffer, wanting to do something about their suffering. And then extending it to someone or people that we find difficult, that we might not call a friend. And seeing that they inherently within themselves, without us labelling, projecting, there's nothing wrong with them. They think what they're doing is bringing happiness to themselves. And extend our compassion to them, not wanting them to suffer, realizing their suffering, and then to all the stranger beings, all of them, billions of them, seeing that they suffer. And we don't really care, but they suffer. They suffer and don't know the cause. And then we bring our mind back to our breath. And we dedicate anything positive that we generated from doing the meditation, such as strengthening our compassion, understanding that all beings are deserving of compassion, so we must help them. So so can we see that all beings are deserving of compassion? All of them? Even the ones we don't like? The thing is that most sentient beings, most people, don't really know the causes of suffering. They don't really know what the causes are, what their causes are. You know, they're sort of going there, suffering in the, the world. And there's one saying, Lama Tsongkhapa said that they go after happiness, but really they're just going after causes of suffering. So people, and they use the analogies of a bucket in a well, like the bucket of drawing the water from a well, the bucket, when it's going down, it's empty and it's clanging and clanging and crashing and against the sides of the well, and it's going down into the well. That is analogous to samsara. Samsara is suffering from karma and delusions. Samsara is not some place out there. It's our being subject to karma and delusions. That is samsara. So for the bucket to then, once the bucket's filled up and someone uses the windlass and hauls it up, that takes great effort. And that is the sentient beings that in samsara are trying to pull the bucket up. And there's more to that analogy, but it's really hard to go from a low rebirth to a high rebirth. The amount of beings that can do that is like the grains on the tip of a fingertip. And the amount of beings that, get stuck in the lower realms, also on the well, the higher realms are analogous to the higher part, like the human and godly realms, and then further down to the animal and the hell realms. And so it's really, really hard it takes a lot of effort to get the bucket up, up into a better rebirth. But the amount of beings that are stuck in the lower rebirth is like the amount of grains of sand in the world. That's what they're very hard-hitting, some of these teachings. So, what about people who seem okay, people who are fine, people who... Well, we're all subject to birth. Some people say we've had trauma from birth. And birth is, if you hear I've heard some teachings on birth, which are quite raw, so we have the suffering of birth, we have the suffering of illness, sickness, even people who sort of appear okay, and we have the suffering of old age and death. So all of us, everybody has to die, and we have to leave our loved ones and possessions behind. So we're all suffering. Sentient beings suffer in this way. And a lot of them don't know why, have no knowledge of the cause of suffering. What is the cause of suffering? I did talk a bit about that before, but so, and another analogy is like a you know, we need to have compassion because everyone's been our mother. Like all sentient beings have been our mother. Because mind is beginningless, and this moment of mind is preceded by the previous moment of mind, and so on, back into birth, back into the womb and into previous lives. So all beings have been our mothers more than once, in many different lives. So that's a reason to have compassion. It's one of the reasons to have compassion. It's also like a mentally ill, like our mothers, like, you know, we really need to get it together because our mothers are like a blind, crazy person. Blind, they don't know the cause of suffering. Crazed by delusions. Walking on a treacherous path. That means a path that doesn't know, you know, the cause of suffering and everything. And without a guide. Like a guide being maybe, you know, Buddhas or Dharma. So these are the analogies that are used for developing compassion for all beings. You know, and so what? So okay, we develop compassion. And then, as part of the sevenfold cause and effect, which is the altruistic intention, as part of that, we then decide, well, all these beings are suffering incredibly, and so, you know, who else is going to? Our friends, you know, we've just asked our friend to relieve all beings from suffering, but they're just as incapable as we are, so it's up to us, individually, up to us. So that's the theory. That's, you know, what the teachings say, that we need to understand compassion, because compassion is the driver of bodhicitta, altruism, and eventually the awakened mind or Buddhahood. So, do we think that's obtainable? I mean, you know, the awakening mind is eventually attainable. It is, because the Buddha was, even though he was a prince and he had all the, you know, he had money and other things, he attained an awakened mind. And we can, no matter how many lifetimes that it takes us, you know, because if we develop true compassion, love and compassion, and understand some wisdom, then we can do it in many lifetimes. And meditation is, they recommend meditation because through meditation we can, you know, we can focus and develop a very calm mind. It's recommended you start off with a minute, and then, you know, go to a few minutes, a couple of minutes, and then eventually to be able to maybe for half an hour a day, and then we think, oh, I don't have a half an hour. But we do, really. So meditation, through meditation, we can develop great compassion, true compassion. We can develop realizations. Realizations are where we sort of fully understand, deeply embedded, like deeply understand things like impermanence, you know, not just talking about it or thinking or reflecting, but we sort of have a realization of impermanence. Or we can develop realizations of wisdom, or through meditation, through calm abiding, which is the advanced meditation, which has 9 stages. You know, calm abiding is, apparently you can't really develop renunciation until you have some sort of calm abiding. Calm abiding is where you can stay in meditation for as long as you want to. like, I suppose months, weeks, years. What's the point of that? Well, that it takes a long time to, develop those qualities. So, so are there any questions now? Anyone think that that's a viable thing to become enlightened for the benefit of all beings? That's the thing. I mean, it is worth, it's worth thinking about. It's worth thinking about the, the compassion, especially, I think. And if we have a strong mind of compassion, I think eventually we would say, well, yeah, I need to do something. I need to develop all my qualities. And, eventually we would, in many lifetimes we would, attain an awakened mind, and we'd be able to benefit many sentient beings. There is another meditation that they recommend for, I don't know if we've got time, but is giving and taking. I'll just talk about it, I think. Giving and taking meditation, which is, it's for, related to developing compassion. It's like we imagine a sort of a hard rock, black rock mass at our heart, and we see all beings surrounding us, all beings in human form, even animals, so it's easier to develop compassion in that way. And we, through breathing, we take in, we breathe in and we take all their suffering on, and it destroys the self-cherishing, which is the black mass at our heart, and it destroys that like in a bolt. And then with our outward breath on our other nostril, we give all happiness, from mundane articles to true happiness, to wishing all beings to have true happiness. And so we can do that with the breath. Giving and taking, taking and giving. So we take on the suffering through our left nostril. We destroy the black mass at our heart, and then we give out bright light in the form of all the things that beings need. So that's another meditation that we can do. We can I think that from some of the reading I've sort of done, and they also say that even animals can care for their young, and but they don't have great compassion. So we're sort of like the animals, we care for our young and we care for people, and we get the things, food we need and that sort of thing. But even animals can do that. But we all need to get some great compassion. So, any comment, question? Do we think that these things are attainable? Ultimately? Yeah. Not easy, but there's inspiration. We can get inspiration from the teachers. You can see there are people who have done this, and I think they develop such a clarity in their mind, from not being bothered by, he did that or she did that, or, all those sort of negative talks. So I thought, well, seeing as though next week I'll talk about more of what we need to adopt. So this week we should, I'm not saying that you have to do anything really, but it's recommended to develop compassion. So, can anyone say why we should develop our compassion?
Because we're all one.
Yeah, true, because we all have the same. We all want happiness and we all don't want suffering. That's the basic, yeah. We are all the same. Well, in, a sense, to varying degrees. Yeah, so if we apply those things, like, that especially since people are, carrying on without knowing the cause of suffering, like, what are the causes of suffering? Well, I did talk about things we need to abandon, which were the 10 non-virtues, killing, stealing, those things. And sort of adopting those 10 virtues, they create the causes for happiness. So, and abandoning, what did I say last week? We had to all abandon, that's right, anger and attachment. Because they make us feel unsettled and not happy. And they don't achieve results. Like being angry or being attached to stuff or to people. We do have love, we love people, but a lot of it's mixed up with attachment. Because if the relationship goes sour, we don't really love them anymore in a sense. We'll sort of dislike them. So most of our relationships are on attachment. Attachment is when there's something in it for us. It's something like as distinct from love, which is where it's not about what we get out of it. It's that they are happy. So if one broke up in a relationship and one was happy for them, even though they left you, then that's real love. That's the sort of love we have to cultivate. Yes. There's a lot to cultivate. So I'll let it go there. Now you're welcome to have a cup of tea in the dining room, or you can ask me if you want me to talk on something I might not know. Things like karma and wisdom are not easy, but I'll maybe talk about that. Anyway, next week continuing on about what we have to adopt, which is, okay, we've talked about compassion, we need to sort of develop compassion. And then maybe there's the 6 perfections which the Bodhisattva perfects. So we can I'll talk about that later. So, okay, thanks very much for coming out in the cold. And, yes, enjoy. Think about it and practice 1 minute a day.